Okay, so we are still working with Target 27, be able to identify, describe, and determine the sequence of major events in Earth's geological history by examining rock layers. So now I'm going to give you the instructions on how to practice this target, how to practice sequencing rocks. So for the first example, and there is a packet, it's available online that has all these examples for you to go through with me. Okay, for the first example, we're going to go through how this would be a rock section, and we're going to put it in order, tell what happened to it. So the first thing, if you notice, that has to occur is we have to deposit layers 1 through 5. And you're asking, well, why don't we deposit all the layers 1 through 8? Well, if you notice, 5 got eroded, so we have to put that in there. That's an unconformity. Remember, any type of erosion is an unconformity. So we're going to deposit layers 1 through 5. Then we're going to erode 5. Then we can deposit 6 through 8. Get the rest of those layers in. Now, if you notice, when everything is deposited, remember from the law of superposition, layers are deposited horizontally. Well, these layers are not horizontal. And that's because, oh, that's a typo. This should not be here. I apologize for that. So, erase that step. Okay, so what happened is these layers were put down horizontally, but then through plate movement, they got tilted. So the next step is tilting. That should be step 4 instead of 5. So then you have to tilt those layers. And then if you notice, we're going to deposit layer 9. You're like, well, it's not there. Well, it's not there because it got eroded. That's what that squiggly line means. When we deposit 9, it gets laid down horizontally. So that's how you know that the tilt came before deposition of 9. Because deposition of 9 did not get tilted. So that's why layer 5 did get tilted. That's why it's up here. So we deposit 9 and erode 9. After that, we're going to deposit layers 10 and 11. They're put down horizontally. Nothing happened to them. And then you've got something that looks like this. You're like, oh my goodness, what is that? That is what we call a magma intrusion. And I forgot to mention this, but any type of magma intrusion, we always label those with letters. And then any rock layers, we give numbers to. So this is a magma intrusion. So the next thing that has to occur is you have magma. And it had to intrude because it came up through all these layers, past layer level, and then it pulled out onto the surface. These layers weren't here yet. Then we deposit layers 12 and 13. But then you notice 12 and 13 in the magma intrusion aren't horizontal anymore. That's because there's been a fold. Okay, so a fold is basically what it looks like. That rock section has been folded. When you see the upper part, the top part of the fold, that's called the anticline. So you would write fold, anticline. Then we're going to deposit layers 14 through 17, because if you notice, layers on top before or after the erosions are 18 and 19. And then, of course, we have to erode layers 14 and 17, and the last step is deposition 18 and 19. Okay, so that's the first example. Trust me, we're going to go through 3 more, so hopefully after the 3 you'll get the hang of it and you can do your own practice. Okay, this next one, we've got our layers, okay? We've got a magma intrusion, we've got some erosion, and then we've got something new. We've got this line right here. This line represents a fault. Whenever I do faults, I always label them with X and Y. So this is a fault, and that lets you know that the rocks slid past each other, and probably maybe an earthquake occurred at that fault. Faulton. Okay. So let's go through this. So we had to deposit layers 1 through 4, erode 4 because that part got eroded, deposit layers 5 through 9. Notice I'm seeing the 5 through 9. Then notice that the magma intrusion right here goes all the way through all those layers. So you've got to put it in there. So the magma intrusion, oh, I forgot the tilt. I apologize. So we have to deposit 5 through 9, then we have to tilt it. Notice the magma intrusion is not tilted, so that's why the tilt comes before the magma intrusion. And since it's mostly vertical, we call that the dike, because it's narrow. When it's not narrow, then we just call it a magma intrusion. And then if you notice, the dike got faulted. It's faulted right here. So are all these layers. They're no longer continuous. So we put in the fault, fault X. Then you're going to deposit layers 10 through 11. These layers did not get faulted and they did not get tilted. So we know they came after the tilt and after the fault. So deposit layers 10 through 11, erode layers 10 through 11, deposit the last two layers 12 and 13. Okay, and please make sure if you have any questions on this stuff, make sure you ask me when you come to class. This next one I had to label because sometimes they won't be labeled for you. So again, I labeled each letter, or I'm sorry, each layer, each rock layer number, 1, 2, 3, because this is the same type of rock, it's the same layer. There's some erosion. I'm just going to assume that one layer eroded. So I'm going to do 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, there's some erosion there, so I'm going to skip a layer. 10, so this is 11, and 12, I've got two intrusions, A and B. Okay, so the first thing I have to do is deposit 1 through 3. If you notice, 1 through 3 should have been laid down horizontally, but then they got folded. Since we're seeing the bottom of the fold, that's called the syncline, so you would write it, fold, syncline. Then you're going to deposit 4, because if you notice, deposition 4 is not folded, so it comes after the fold. Then we're going to erode 4. Then we're going to deposit 5 through 9, and then we've got to tilt it, because everything gets tilted. Then we have magma intrusion B. If you notice, magma intrusion B is not tilted. That's why it comes after the tilt. Then we're going to deposit 9, erode 9, deposit 11 and 12, and then do the last magma intrusion. Because A, magma intrusion, goes all the way through and is on top of layer 12, that means layer 12 had to be deposited before the magma intrusion. Okay, the last example that I'm going to do with you, okay, again, I had to label it. I've got intrusion A, intrusion B, magma intrusion, layers 1, 2, and 3, and then I've got two faults. So I did fault X and fault Y. So we deposit layers 1 and 3, magma intrusion A, because it comes up and it intrudes layer 1. Then we have a fold, anticline, because it's the top part of the fold. Then if you notice, fault X has to come before fault Y. Fault X, then intrusion B, because intrusion B goes all the way to the top, and then fault Y. Notice the intrusion B got faulted on fault Y, but it didn't get faulted on fault X. That's why intrusion B is in between the two faults. Okay, so that's the explanation on how we sequence rock sections, and we're able to determine what happened in the past. When did magma come up? When did earthquakes and faults occur? So now you should be ready to start practicing on this on your own. And again, remember, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask me in class.